Okay, in this demo we're going to basically try to make a website for an HTML class. Alright, so we're going to have a home page. It's going to have some page information and the set of links linking to the other portions of the site. Okay, so some of the other portions of the site might include examples that you work on in class, so an in-class section, an assignment section, and then some notes on HTML elements, some notes on CSS properties, and some notes on JavaScript. Okay, so we're going to add all of these different pages into our site. All right, so let's start with the index. This is just going to be the home page, and we have a basic index.html laid out here. We've got very simple style. We're adding margin 0 to the body, and then a very simple script tag, console.log application started. Okay, so all of these items, I have a folder here, site, on my desktop, and I'm going to add all of the items in there. So I can open this and double click, and this should open up in a browser, and we see we've got, this is what our current page looks like. Alright, we'll close that. Alright, so what we want to do is just kind of make a basic template that we can use for the rest of our pages. Alright, so I'm going to use some background images that are easily retrievable from the internet. So URL, I like to use place kitten just because it's very easy. HTTPS or HTTP placekitten.com/ and this is going to be for your page, so it needs to be a fairly large image, so we could say something like 1200 and 900, something like that. So that can be our background image. You can save that, reload the page, and we've got a nice background image there. We want to fix the attachment, background attachment fixed. That means the background will not scroll when the content scrolls, and then we want to position it. Background position, and we can say center top or center center. Right, and so now the page is centered. The center of the image is centered with the center of the viewport, and both vertically and horizontally, right? And so as we adjust the size, we see that the image remains in the center, right? Even if we adjust vertically. Okay, so that's basic background. What we want to do is add a sort of a content div in here. So this div is going to include our main content. And again, we're making a template page. This first page, our index, is going to be a template for our other pages. So we only really have to create this one time, and then we can duplicate this across our other pages. Now we want to make sure we get this right first, because we are not using a separate CSS or JavaScript file. So if we have to make changes to our CSS on one page, we'll have to make changes to them on other pages. Right? Ideally, you would separate this out into a separate CSS file and share that. Okay, so div class, this is going to be our main content div, so we're just going to call this main and /div. Alright, and we can adjust the CSS here, main. So .main is selecting all elements that have the class name, that's what the dot means, class name, main. So we're looking for elements that have an attribute named class, that's what the dot means, and then main. So here, since there's only one, it's going to only affect this HTML element. So what we want to do is say width 80%, and then we can say background color, and we can set a background color. You have this nice color picker in Atom. It's a plugin called Color Picker. We want to pick something that's maybe kind of bluish because that's a snow. It's a snowy picture, right? So I do something a little bit blue. We want some translucency behind it, So somewhere in the middle, so we can find something that's going to be a little bit blue, maybe kind of lighter. Move this up just a little bit. There we go. So that looks good. You can use that value, RGBA. Oops. All right, we got our background color, and we want to add an H tag inside of here, H1. And so this is the home page. So I might have my user account, CS101 or 170.0.0. And then we also want to add the title, homepage up here. There we go. Reload the page, homepage CS101. Okay, so now this div, if we inspect it, is 80% of the width. We probably want to add some padding. And that's going to be, we'll say, 30 on top and bottom and 50 on the sides. Reload that. All right, so we got some padding around it. Now we set the width to 80%. Let's add a border real quick too. We're going to say border is solid black 1px, and then we'll add a border radius 10px. Reload the page. Okay, so we've got a little radius there, and what we want to do is we want this the margins auto on the left and right, and maybe a margin on top and bottom. Okay, so we're going to add a margin here. Margin on top, maybe 20px, and then auto, then the bottom, maybe 30px, and then auto. Alright, so that's kind of centered, but this is supposed to be the width of 80%. But somehow this div appears to be larger than 80% of the parent. That's because of box sizing. When we specified, by default, when we specify the width, the inside of this content is what's 80%. And then the padding is not counted in that 80%, nor is the border. But if we change the box sizing, we can say box sizing, sorry, this is for all the elements, star. We want to change box sizing to border box. There we go. So for all of our elements, box sizing, border box. And we see what that does is when we specify 80%, instead of it just being the content, 80% means the border, the padding, and the content. All of that is 80%. Okay, so this makes it so a little bit easier to size things back and forth like this. We see that it does maintain 80% of the total parent width, as you might expect. So you'll see this commonly in in most web applications. Okay, so now we want the page heading. So that we'll call this class equals page heading. And this is text align center, and that gives us a nice bit of centered text there. All right, and we could have different color if we want. You could modify this to whatever you're liking, but you need to try to make this look kind of good. I'm not going to spend much time on the styles. This is just an example to show you how to create one, but you should spend some time on the styles and make sure it looks kind of good, right? So right now this looks kind of hokey with this white background and this kind of light blue, but it's good enough for our purposes. All right. So what we want to do here is we want to add some sort of navigation menu. All right. So we're going to have a div here, a div that is nav menu, and this is going to contain links, a series of links, href. Alright, so the first link will be for stuff that we've done in class. The next link will be for assignments that we might have completed. The next link will be notes on HTML elements, then notes on CSS, and then notes on JavaScript. Okay, so we have links to these three things, and these items are going to be called in-class.html. This will be assignments.html. This will be html.html. This one will be css.html, and this one will be javascript.html. Alright, so we've got our links in a div called nav menu. We can reload the page and see what it looks like. It probably won't look good, right? Which it does not. So what we want to do is maybe make this div style it a little bit and add nav menu here as a CSS selector. We'll say width 100%. We'll say background color. We can use our color picker and add them, or we can manually pick something. We can do something starting out with our blue and modify it a little bit. So we might want to say the RGBA, but we want something much lighter, so we'll add maybe 50 or so to each one of these. So this is 130, and then this will be 180, and this will be, the blue will be 255 maxed out, and we'll put this at maybe 75. Alright, and we can kind of see what that looks like. And we reload the page, and so this is a nice lighter blue, and we can see the text a little bit better on that. We want the width to go to 100%, which it currently is because there's padding here, right? So the padding is part of this bigger element. Okay, if we don't want that, which that might be something we want to mess with, we could remove that padding and have this go all the way across the width of the page, right? So here we could remove this padding and have our navigation bar all the way across the width of the page. So let's try that, and we're going to need to have the nav menu. We're going to text align center, margin auto. Wait, no, not on the nav menu. Text align center is going to place the items in the middle, right? So that's good. We might want to make some spacing decisions there. So on each one of these individual nav items, this is going to be each one of these A tags. Class equals nav item. Alright, so we can copy this on all of them. Right, and also we might want to make one more to just link to the home page. Right, so this is our index page. We'll call this one home. Right, so we've got all of these links up here at the top, so that's pretty good. And then We can style them individually if we want. We can try margin auto and see if that does anything. I have my doubts that it will, but it might space this properly. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. What we want to do, we basically aligned all of the text here in the middle, text align center on the parent container, all right, which kind of squishes everything together. So what we can do on the individual nav items is add a slight margin on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Margin left, 10px, and margin right. Margin. I'm getting ahead of myself typing. Margin. There we go. And refresh. And so now that adds a little bit of space in between, right? Now it does, if the page gets smaller, it kind of clumps up, but that's okay. It's good enough for now. We could make this much fancier, but we're not going to do that for this particular one. One other thing we want to do is in the nav menu, we're going to add a little padding around everything. So we're going to say padding, on top we want maybe 20px, and on the sides we want maybe 30px. So let's try that. Reload the page. There we go. Something like this. Alright, and then our content is just going to go underneath this nav menu. So anything that we want to add. So on this home page we might want to have an unordered list of some items that relate to our user. Right, so we might have you know, our name, our user account. Right, I have two, so the instructor account and the student account, email, and then anything else you might want to add here in this list, anything pertinent to the course, right? And then you would close that unordered list tag. So there's some basic information, and if I wanted to add some extra stuff so that this fills out the body of the page a little bit more, I can add a few BR tags at the end to kind of fill some stuff out until I add more content later, right? So the BR tags kind of fill that out, and I can add some more stuff in there later. But here we've got a nice basic page. We've got the background. It's translucent. We can still see the cat. We've got a nav menu up at the top. And if we wanted to, we could add one at the top and bottom, right? I could just copy and paste this and put this at the bottom as well. You probably only want to do that if the page is really large. So this is a pretty good start to a template, right? And what I can do is I can copy this page to each one of these other ones, right? So in class, assignments, HTML, and JavaScript. Okay, so I'll have to change the title and the heading on each one of these, right? So let's duplicate the file, and this will be in class.html, right? And we'll change this to in class work, and then down here in class work, right? And then we need to duplicate this, and we'll say this is assignments. I just realized I made a mistake. This is, 170 is the web programming class, so we'll fix that on these. 170, just like that. Assignments. There we go. Fix that up. Assignments. 170, 170. Right. So I need to fix that here before we duplicate our error anymore. There we go. So reload the page, and we see in class takes us to the other page, in class work, and assignments takes us to another page, assignments. So notice we are at a different URL, even though it looks the same. It's just that we use the site as a template. So the only thing we've really changed is the headings and then the tab, right? So if I go to this, it doesn't exist yet, right? So what we need to do is create it. So oops, let's duplicate. This is going to be HTML.html. We need to create this one. This will be notes on HTML. HTML notes. And paste that down here. HTML notes. And then duplicate this. We can call this one CSS. Find and replace. We want to find and replace HTML notes and replace that with CSS notes. To found, find, replace, save the file, and duplicate that to JavaScript. Find HTML notes and change that to JavaScript notes. Find, replace, find, replace. Alright, so now we have all of these items. We can go home, in class, assignments, notes, notes on CSS, notes on JavaScript, etc. Alright, so now all we have to do is start filling in the content for each one of these. Right? So for let's start with HTML. This one can be a little bit tricky because we're going to add an unordered list of HTML elements. And what we want to do here is talk about each element name, right? So this is going to be we're going to have a span that's going to be the label. So this is the element name, so we can call this class element name, right? And here this would be we want to display something like, let's start with the P tag, the paragraph tag, right? The paragraph tag, if I want to actually display the characters less than, and then the P, and then greater than, this won't work in HTML directly, because if I have this tag in my HTML, even though this is exactly what I want to display, the browser is going to think I'm trying to make a P tag, a paragraph tag here, right? But I'm not. I actually want it to display the less than symbol. So what I have to do there is, instead of using the less than symbol, I have to use an escape sequence, right? These are called HTML entities. So the escape sequence starts with the ampersand, and then I say LT for less than, and then a semicolon. So these four characters will tell the browser to actually render a less than symbol instead of these characters. Okay, so that's how these HTML entities are written. They start with ampersand and end with a semicolon. And what's in between is the name of the particular item that you want to display. So LT stands for the less than symbol. Here we have ampersand, semicolon, and in between GT for greater than. Okay, so when we reload this page, we can get rid of those two elements. Right? This is HTML notes. So we're on JavaScript notes. There we go. So when we see, it actually renders the P tag, which is what we want. All right. So we have the P tag rendered there. We're going to make a BR tag and have some description. So what we can do, you're allowed to do this for all of your tags. You can go to W3 Schools and look up the tag, and you can just get some description. See, so the P tag defines a paragraph, right? And you could do all of this if you wanted. It would be up to you. Right, so we'll copy all of that text, add that under here. Right, now again, it created one of these P tags, so we have to replace less than with that, and then this is ampersand greater than. Right? If we don't do that, it won't work right. And again, we have another one over here, ampersand less than, and then ampersand greater than. All right. So now we can reload that, our HTML notes. The p tag defines a paragraph, and it has some extra information about it, right? Okay. And then the last thing you do for each one of these is have an example. And what we want to do here is we might make this like an H6 tag or something. Here we're going to use, there's a couple different ways we could do this. We could use a code tag, or we can use a text box. So we got an example, maybe make that H5 instead. Right, so we've got the example, and we can say code. Inside of here, everything is monospaced as if it was actually a block of code. Right, so we can style this a bunch of different ways if we would like, and then we can also use a pre-tag inside of here, which pre-formats the text. Okay, what that's going to do is if we move this back here, anything inside of here is going to be formatted. Anything inside of here is going to be formatted exactly as I type it. So if I have a new line character, it's going to put in a new line character. The only exception is you still do need to use the and less than and greater than symbols. So for example, if we went to the W3 page and use their example here, right? We can copy and paste that, and that's going to be our example of how to use this tag. So I'm going to put that exactly in here, paste, right? But this p tag we actually want to display. So we use ampersand less than, and then ampersand greater than. Same over here for this closing tag, ampersand less than, oops, not the p, and then ampersand greater than. Okay, it's a little bit tedious, but that's how the browser will render this the way you want. So here's the nice example, and see how it looks like code as opposed to the normal font. Part of the thing that makes the text look like code is using a monospaced font. Okay, so each character here has the same width as every other character. The character I has the same width as what is traditionally a larger character M. Whereas if you look up here, the character M is that wide, and we'll see if we can find an I in here. You see the character I is much skinnier, right? So monospace fonts. All right, so you would do this for each of the 10 HTML tags that you can add. And once you do it once, you can kind of copy and paste and then play around with it from there. All right, so we've got unordered list, a list item, and anytime you come up with a new HTML element, you can write down some information, and all of it's in one place in your HTML notes. All right, so that's HTML notes, and you can do the same thing for CSS, right? So CSS, back to HTML, and element name. Right? Oh, we never added anything here for element name in the CSS, which you don't have to, but you could. Element name. We might want font weight bold. One color white, maybe. Reload the page. So this is the p tag. Something to make it stand out. I mean, that's a bit much, but I mean, you get the idea. Kind of make it nice, so you can see what's going on. And you should spend some time on making this look nice. I'm just going through it quickly to show you kind of how to do the things. but you spend a little bit more time to make it your own. Alright, so that's HTML. You do the same sort of thing for the CSS page, right? So just like that, you have an unordered list, and we're going to have CSS properties, right? I mean, so we could even just copy and paste from over here, the HTML line item, paste that under here, and instead of element name, this would be property name. And then, background color. Alright, then up here we'd make background color. Oh, sorry, we'd make property name. And this, we'd make the color of the text, white like we did in the other one, and we'd make the font weight bold. Right, and so background color is the name of our property. We would have some information. You could say CSS background color, and W3 schools is the first link, and you can say the background color property sets the background color of the margin, or of the element. All right, so we can go through and just copy and paste this text. We don't have to worry about the HTML elements as much, right? Or the HTML entities, because we're not using greater than or less than symbols when we're describing CSS. So really the HTML one is the hardest. And then we have the example, right? So we want to delete what's in here, and we're going to use the example that they have. Example usage. Let's see if they have it. There we go. And we can just copy and paste that in here. Right, and we go back to HTML notes, reload the page, we can go to notes on CSS, and now we have background color, some information, and then how to use it. We can do that for each one of our CSS elements. Similarly for JavaScript, we can just copy and paste everything we have here. This li, JavaScript. I'll put that in here in this unordered list. And instead of property name, this will be JS item, right? Because it could be a number of different things. And what we're going to do first is console.log. And so up here we have .js item, .name, or hyphen name, and we do the same thing, color white, font weight bold. There we go. Alright, so we've got the label, console.log. We need some information about it, so we can look up, in JavaScript, console.log on the internet, and click on that. Console.log writes messages to the console. Right, copy and paste that. Kind of clean this up a little bit. Console.log, and then we have an example, and they have an example as well. And you can copy and paste the example, or you can make your own. That's completely fine too. Right, and then reload the page, and we can go to JavaScript, and there's console.log, and then we have what it is and the example. So this HDiv is a bit much. I'm not liking all the space there, but you can tweak all of this, right? So for each one, you can change this. If you don't like the H tag, just make it a span and set your own CSS styles on it. So for home, you've got the basic information. You could put an image of yourself or some information, what major you are, stuff like that. In class, this is where we're going to add stuff, any link to anything that we've done in class. So anything you work on in class, have a link to it. And then assignments, is going to be the things you've worked on for assignments, and you can have links to all of this. So when you get finished with this, you're going to have a nice site or a nice portfolio of everything you did in this class, and it's going to be very nice the way it's laid out. Okay, so you do not have to use this template at all. This is a very quick one. This one is rather ugly. Do spend some time on it and make it look nice. Okay, but this gives you an idea of how you could go about structuring this to start out with. All right, so that's enough for this demo.